Hello friends and welcome back. Today's video brings together a few of my main interests: self-management, personal productivity, and project management. Let's chat about why it's important to be able to visualize all the tasks and projects you have on your plate and why making this work visible increases your productivity. I just finished reading the book Making Work Visible by Dominica DeGrandis. This is a project management slash time management book focused on the IT industry. While the content focuses mostly on IT workflows and processes, I found a lot of it applicable to personal projects and personal tasks. The gist of this book is that knowledge work is usually invisible, and so it's easy for our time and energy to be hijacked by a constant flow of demands. And this constant stream of new requests forces us to take on too much and basically sabotages our results. I think that similarly, a lot of our personal projects and the general management of our personal lives are invisible. We don't typically track this stuff visually. We mostly keep it in our heads, and if we happen to write it down, we don't necessarily plan dedicated time or plan our energy to get this personal stuff done. We just hope that it all fits within the cracks of our days in between taking care of everything else. So what's the deal with invisible work? First of all, the book emphasizes something I've been trying to communicate in a lot of my videos. There will always be more demand for our time and our energy than we have the capacity to accomplish. We have to actively manage our capacity and choose what we take on. So invisible work includes all the stuff we keep in our heads, the fires we put out, and the random requests we end up saying yes to. It's all the stuff we end up doing without fully recognizing it as work on our plates. And because we don't fully claim all these side projects, we don't really factor them into our capacity planning. Here's a great quote from the book that sums it up. With invisible work, we don't notice the explicit reminders that our mental budget is already full. There's no time to simply think. And so we add more stuff to our plates without taking anything off to make room for it. Maybe going into this week, you think that you only have 3 major projects on your plate: 2 projects at work, and 1 personal project like maybe cleaning out your basement. You plan your time and energy accordingly and it seems doable. But then your car breaks down and you have to get it fixed. This means multiple trips to the repair shop, research online, calling a few friends who know car stuff, getting rides to and from the repair shop so you can drop off and pick up your car, and taking time off from work so you can be gone a couple afternoons this week. Another relatable scenario is that you plan your 3 projects for the week, but then someone close to you, someone you really care about, starts going through something personal, something difficult. So you end up meeting with them a few times this week and you spend a lot of time listening to what they're going through. There's a lot of texting back and forth and maybe a few phone calls where you check on them. And even when you're not actively talking to them, you're thinking about them and you're worrying about them. This may not register as a new project on your plate, but it does take up your time and energy. And there's nothing wrong with these 2 examples. I mean, life happens, and the people we care about deserve our time and attention. The problem is that without acknowledging these extra demands in our capacity, we still try to cram everything into the same week. We overload ourselves and set unrealistic expectations. And so we end up failing at getting it all done, and we end up feeling disappointed in ourselves. Now that we have some clarity on what invisible work is and why it's a problem, let's talk about the 5 time thieves that we need to protect ourselves from. In the book, these 5 factors are described in the context of an IT department, but I want to take a look at how they relate to our personal lives outside of work. The first time thief is too much work in progress. This is what happens when we say yes to too many things and end up with too much on our plates. We usually say yes because it's uncomfortable to say no, or because we consider each request in a vacuum, meaning that we don't think about how saying yes to this one thing will affect our overall capacity. When I started this channel last year, I had a full-time job and a part-time job teaching. I was serving on a couple of boards. I was getting regular treatments to manage my Crohn's disease, and I was trying to work out more, all while having a daughter, husband, and dog I wanted to spend time with. This kind of overload happens gradually. You squeeze in one more thing and then another until you have exceeded your capacity to function properly. When we have too much work in progress, the quality of what we do suffers. We end up doing a lot of context switching, which comes at a cost. The second time thief is unknown dependencies. This is what happens when you have to coordinate with others or you're waiting on them to do something so you can do what you have to do. Every dependency increases the complexity of what you're trying to do and increases the chances that you will be delayed or you simply won't get your piece done. Let's take the car repair example. If you go into the car repair shop to repair your brakes and then they find that there are other things broken with your car, this can end up being a much bigger project than you originally anticipated. The car repair shop may have to work on something else before they get to your brakes, or they may have to order special parts that will be delayed and will increase how long it takes for you to get your car back in working shape. The third time thief is unplanned work. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but these are all the fires that you need to put out, all the stuff you didn't account for that ends up in your lap that you have to take care of. A rule of thumb I like to use to determine if something is truly urgent and requires me to drop everything is to ask myself whether the situation will get worse if I do nothing. Sometimes things feel urgent because people are pressuring you to do them. But nothing bad will happen if you take your time addressing them. If your immediate inaction doesn't make the situation worse, then it's not truly an emergency. A good way to account for unplanned work is to give yourself some buffers. Preserve some capacity. Don't block out 100% of the time available to you. Giving yourself a little bit of breathing room means that these urgent requests will not derail your day or your entire week. The fourth time thief is conflicting priorities. You have to decide what is most important to you right now. Pursuing too many priorities at the same time is a surefire way to end up with too much work in progress. If possible, try to identify one single priority. The next time thief is neglected work. This is stuff you started working on at some point but never finished it. This is the stuff sitting on a bench waiting for you to pick it up at a later date. You're not actively working on it, but it's taking up space in your brain. Sometimes when we neglect work long enough, it can create emergencies. For example, if you've been neglecting your health or your personal relationships, it could end up causing problems. The book also talks about invisible technical debt that accrues over time. Obviously, this is meant for the IT world, but you can also acquire technical debt in your personal projects. Sometimes when you take shortcuts in the moment, you have to pay for those later. Neglected work can also show up when you cut corners now with a plan to fix things later. And sometimes the stuff sitting on the bench just needs to be released. Sometimes you just have to acknowledge the fact that a thing you've been working on for a while no longer serves you, and it's time to let it go. Some of your old lingering projects just need to be killed to free up your mental capacity. Being aware of these 5-time thieves and understanding their impact might just be enough to help you start addressing them in your personal life. But if you want to take it a step further, let's discuss the tool that the book recommends. As you can tell from the book title, the solution is to make the work visible and to expose the ways in which our time gets stolen so we can manage our capacity better and improve our outcomes. The author recommends using a Kanban board to do this. A Kanban board is a visual tool that organizes your tasks and projects into 3 main categories, each represented by a column. The first is a list of projects or to-do items or a backlog. The second column is for your work in progress, and the last column is for your completed work. You can also name these columns to do, doing, and done. This is the basic structure, but you can add more detail and more columns as needed. You can make this a physical board with post-it notes. You can put post-its on your wall. You can use a whiteboard, or you can create a digital board using Trello, Notion, or something like that. A Kanban board helps you capture all your projects in one place and helps you visualize the flow of your activities. The goal is to limit what's in your work in progress or your doing column. Remember that you should only say yes to what's most important at any given time. So you'll need to determine what your capacity for work in progress is. That's how you control how much you have on your plate at any given time. You can set a limit on the number of items that can be in the middle column, and then commit to not adding anything new until you've moved something else to the done column. You can also limit the number of work in progress items based on their intensity. Maybe one of those items will take 30 minutes, but another one will require half a day. So you would set the limit on the number of hours you have available and limit your work in progress accordingly. This is a great way to visually manage how much you have on your plate at any given time. And in addition to helping you manage your project load, visualizing everything you are trying to accomplish can help you solve problems and address challenges you've been facing. Here's another great quote from the book. When we bring our visual sense to solving problems, we get clarity around the problem and it's easier to make decisions. Making work visible is one of the most fundamental things we can do to improve our work because the human brain is designed to find meaningful patterns and structures in what is perceived through vision. Now that we've talked about the basic structure of a Kanban board, let's look at a few variations I found on the internet. I really like this example that splits the work in progress column in two. It breaks down what you plan to accomplish this week and what you are working on today. Both of the middle columns show your work in progress. Here's another example of a personal Kanban board. They added a column to track blockages. You could probably rename blockages as challenges, interruptions, or unplanned work. Tracking this can help you expose your time thieves and figure out what typically derails you from sticking to your plans. This is a great way to start recognizing patterns of things that stand in your way. The next one is an example of a family Kanban board. This shows the three standard columns for to-do, doing, and done, but I love that they added rows for different family members. And I don't have the full background on this board, but you can tell that it is color-coded and that there are different icons for different things. So you can really have fun with this and make the Kanban board work for you. Making your personal tasks and projects more visual will improve your capacity planning and increase the likelihood that you get your projects done without overloading yourself and burning out. Overall, I found this book really insightful. It initially appealed to me because project management is my full-time job in the real world. Although I don't work in IT, but in higher education with a focus on public health projects. So project management frameworks like Waterfall, Lean, and Hybrid, the Scaled Agile framework, and using Kanban boards were right up my alley professionally. But it's also fun to look at these tools through the lens of our personal to-dos. I hope that you learned at least one useful thing from this video and that you will try to implement it. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Remember to take really good care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.